Hello, welcome to this live tutorial on how to pick the best drafting design for your prints. So this was very much a members request because if you don't know, I'm Charlotta, and I have an online pattern cutting school called Charlotta's Pattern Cutting School. And today we're going to look at prints because one of my lovely members shared a print and said, oh, any ideas on what to do with this print? So I thought it'd be quite nice to do a little tutorial on how to pick the right drafting design to your prints, because normally if you're applying fabric, you sort of have to look at the weight, and then you choose the design which fits it. So the drafting side, we're talking volumes, pleats, gathers, and dart manipulation. But of course, if you introduce a print, it adds another dimension because you have to consider the weight, the size of the print, whether it's very close together or very big, and that will have an impact on what you draft with it. And I'm going to get into it in a second, but just to let you know, at the moment, if you are interested in drafting and if you like vintage inspired styles, do have a look at my pattern cutting school. At the moment, I have a special deal. I'll link to it in the description below. But if you join me for a year, you basically get all my made to measure block courses for free. So this is great if you already maybe been with me for monthly basis or watched lots of my YouTube tutorials, or up to now you might have been working off sewing patterns, because of course drafting you can just add to sewing patterns too. And if you're then now ready to take a plunge and you want to have a whole year of drafting content, live Q&As, a community, and made to measure trouser and bodice block courses, then do have a look in the description, and it's on for a week. It finishes tomorrow. So let's get started and say hello to everybody. So hello Maria, hello Claire. I'm glad you can make it. Your half term is a week ahead of ours, so I'm taking next week off because it's our half term, as you must be in the UK or a UK related country, because that's basically a weird holiday we have in the middle of a term. And hello Natalie, thank you very much. Is it midnight where you are in Australia? It must be something like that. You're very late or very early, so thank you for staying up or getting up. And hello Beth, good morning Beth, and hello Suzanne, I hope you're doing well. And good morning Heather, and I'm glad you love prints too. I love them too, and I think prints are great because they bring so much bonus to your drafting design. So it's just about using these skills. So I'm sort of going to look at 3 prints, because if you've been, I'm just looking for, I've got it on the ironing board. If you've been following my stories a little bit or on the membership, I've been making a dress out of a silk organza. This was very, I call it empty. Maybe it's quite a placed floral print. And things like that, if you get it wrong, a print like that can be really boring, and you can end up basically with a white dress with just a few flowers. So with stuff like that, it's really important to get your design right. So I'm going to look at sort of all over prints, but sort of thinking more about what if you have lots of things going on in your print, where we have a more sparse print like the tulip organza. And I'm also going to look at borders, because Jenny on the membership, she bought a really beautiful wool paisley with a really nice border. So I'm going to look at that, because it's always quite fun that if you have a print which basically comes in separate parts, where you have sometimes you have different tiles, you have borders, how you can have actually fun with it and use it to your advantage. And the last thing I'm going to look at is really big prints, because that's, again, slightly different, or sort of medium to very big. And I'm not looking at stripes or geometrics, or because I think that's, again, a different that gets even more interesting, because there you can have lots of fun with the direction of a stripe. But if you're interested, because I love stripes, I don't really wear them. I love making with stripes, but then I don't really wear stripes. So I'm not allowed to buy any more striped fabrics, and I'm not allowed to make anything with striped fabrics, because it just hangs in my cupboard if I do. So if you want to know something about stripes, do let me know. I do different one, and let me know if you have any questions about prints as well, as I started. And Bethel is saying, I love prints too, but it seems like big designers use solids all the time. Yeah, I think it's from having worked with a company. We weren't big. We were maybe a team of 12 people maximum, like selling sort of 80 styles a year. What was really interesting is that adding a print, because of course you want to have your own print. So unless you purchase a print from one of the big fairs, one of the big producers, if you make your own, it basically gets even more expensive unless you have the printing mills in-house. Like that's why Missoni or Marni, the big, really big fashion houses, they print their own, so they can do beautiful prints. But otherwise it adds so much extra cost. And of course, print straight away, you can't match it too much. So I think it's quite a commercial thing, which is a great thing if you're making your own. You don't have to think, can I sell 70 in a floral, or all the more conservative clients are just going to buy navy, because that's what we basically sold, navy and black, and you could have one print a year. And Natalie says she loves stripes and she does wear them. Well done. Yeah, I just oh, actually I'm going to show you. Look, I'm wearing my favorite check wool, cream wool window check skirt, which is really thin and has this really nice 3D woven line. But I sort of, with that you have to, they're plain, which is of course the thing about prints as well. Like quite often you contrast it with something plain. So let's get started. The first ones I was going to look at, I'm going to look at some images, but I'm also going to just draw out designs. And Heather is just saying, I usually smaller prints, but bought a lot of rayon large print on sale. Ooh, that sounds exciting. I sometimes hold each pattern piece up on me to see how the print will look for these pattern pieces. Yeah, I think that's really important. And if we start I will start releasing this series first soon, because that's all about the placement. I'm actually going to get another piece of fabric. There we go. I had, I think, 4 meters of it, and I've used up nearly every bit of it, so I've got how much left. But there's going to be a bigger design tutorial out for that, on all my thinking processes. But let's have a look at, I'm going to switch over to my table if I can. And thank you, Heather, for the compliment. And Claire saying, I love stripes and wear them, would love to know how to draft for stripes and check. I will do something then, because I think you can have so much fun, but it also can be a little bit tricky at times. Let's move to the table. So I'm actually going to take the iPad away for a second. Actually, this is the second thing I'm going to look at. I'm going to take the iPad away, not spill my tea. Okay, so if you're working with any all over print, this is actually quite a big print, I think. So actually, let's start with smaller prints. Really, so if you're, actually I'm going to go back. If you have a really itsy bitsy print, which I gave away. But if you have a very small print, you can basically nearly treat that as a solid, because it won't interfere. So I think with itsy bitsy print, it's quite nice, because I work basically on everything. I'm just thinking whether there's any rules I wouldn't do for very small prints. But it's quite nice if you introduce a solid with the same color of you want to highlight off the itsy bitsy print. Let me try to find one. Oh. Okay, this is what I call an itsy bitsy print. So that's, you know, you can see that's nearly like a tweed or something, or like a speckled thing with something that's small. So you are with that, I don't actually worry. I would design anything with it, because from far away it basically just looks like a texture. But it's really nice what you can do with prints like that, depending on what color you pick out. So I've done stuff out of that, and then I've added a grow grain in that really bright red, and that lifts everything up. And Natalie's saying Liberty prints. Yeah, this isn't a Liberty drinks, but it's sort of these small dots, small patterns. I always think very lovely for blouses, because they basically, these bigger prints, they can start distracting from design lines or interfering. Itsy bitsy Liberty prints, very small floral prints, are basically fantastic, because they are like a plain, because they still show all the details. And Janet is saying hello, and she loves prints and stripes, and hello to Montreal, which I think I realized I catching you on the breakfast, so that is great. So it's like a breakfast club. No, it's not really a lesson, isn't it? Get together. Start your day with pattern cutting. Okay, here we go. You might have noticed I've got a slightly new layout than normal, so everything is off limits. So if you look at sort of medium-sized prints, and also prints which have quite a lot of white space, and I'm looking at this really beautiful Balenciaga dress, and Balenciaga is quite interesting because he didn't actually do that much print. He is, like Beth said, he liked plain fabrics because of the design lines. But if you look at this, then it's really interesting, because this is actually an embroidery, but I call it print. But it's got really wide spacing. So what he has actually quite cleverly done, and I think this might be actually embroidered after it's made partly, but with a print like that, you have to be really careful, because he's got design lines here, here, and here. So his is made afterwards. But if you have like a print, if I'm using this, which is a proper print, if you had a print like this, and you dress like a really basic dress like this, and I have no idea why I'm drawing in red, but I am now. If you chose the print wrongly, you could end up with just a few bits there, and it would be quite empty. And even if you chose it right, if you just, for example, had darts, you could just end up with one floral and then little bits. So if you have that's the nice thing, if you have a close print, then, you know, it'd be all over, so it wouldn't matter. But if you have a more place print, you have to think quite carefully about where you add your lines. So you can see here, for example, he's actually added like in that sort of sailor collar bow stuff, because that suddenly makes it 3D, so it adds volume. Because this prints like that, they can look really flat if you just do your basic dart construction. So what you always have to think about is doing some sort of layering or some other design details. I'm going to show you some different ones. So this one is one we did on the membership a while ago. You can see that's an incredibly sparse print. So they have done, first of all, they placed it really carefully. I'm actually not sure I would have placed it there, but they must have sort of not have a choice, because if you move up, of course, what you try to avoid is having a print placement on your bust point. So what they've basically done is placed it very carefully, and then they've also added these pleats again, so they break it up a bit, because if this blouse was just it's a really bad drawing. You can see, I think, was I on last week? Yes, we looked at the coronation last week, which was great fun. Like I say, I can't draw. So this is really nice because, again, it breaks up the prints. If it was just a similar sort of star, but completely flat, just like this, and maybe just like a seam here and a seam here, you would end up with just print here, a print here, a print here or here. So by adding the details, the pleats and the darts, it actually breaks it up. So it's sort of really important about when you design yourself, you actually really consider, as Heather said, you place it where it suits you. And for a really big print, you can be really precise. But even for a medium or quite a sparse print, you can really often adding volumes or gathers. Like here you can see the pleats here, they actually move everything together. So if I get this here, and Suzanne is saying, I'm short and petite, and it's usually said that my type can't wear big patterns, so I avoided them. I hate these rules, Suzanne. I think you have to be careful. I do get what you mean. Or big patterns of print, yeah, it's a sort of patterns of print, but no, prints are patterns, but patterns don't have to be prints because they can be woven. So because for example, I can't wear, I find pleats really, you know, the Japanese design. I've tried it on in shops before. It's also very expensive, but I find these big pleated stars, they drown me. I'm bigger than you. I'm 5 foot. I'm 168 centimeters. So it is sort of where you have to be careful because, of course, you have less height to spread them out. But I think you just have to pick the right print for you. So if you had a massive flower here, for example, it wouldn't look that great, but you can use drafting methods to break them up. And I've got some for really big ones later. And Heather said, I would love to hear Charlotte's view on large prints and smaller pieces. So same question. And what Heather is saying, I can get away with large prints for drawstring pants. And that's what I was going to say. So if you have, this is a medium-sized print, but if you have a large print, it's quite big. But if you add pleats, it first of all brings the flowers together. It makes it 3D, so it adds, it breaks them up, and it becomes less place, because of course the bigger the print is, the more they place the repetition. And you know, like you can, the typical ones are the Marimekko, where you have the really big circle, but then quite often if you start breaking it up, they actually become much more flattering. And actually Beth says she's 5'4" and she will bring prints all the time on full skirts. Yes, and if you have a look on Beth's, what Beth is your Instagram called now? Is it Textiles of Amazing Skirts? But she does these beautiful circle skirts and different styles. And you can see again, because a circle skirt ends up being from, you know, this looks not that great, but a circle skirt is basically like this. So this is really bad draping. But suddenly with a circle skirt, again, it breaks it up. So it breaks up a big space. And Natalie says she loves the pleat idea to break up the print. It's not my own, but it does make sense. And I should also say, of course, I'm not a print specialist, but these are just things I've sort of found. So we actually, like, a lot of the things I'm talking is both about placement, sparse prints, and pleat, big prints. So I might sort of do them all together as we are already. Never, again, want to show you another example. If you don't want lots of volume, have a look at this dress again. So this is a medium-sized print, but what they basically done, instead of just having a plain line, they first of all added a center front seam. So that already breaks up the print. And then they've added your bust, like one seam right through the bust, and then they actually added a second shaping seam there, and I've drawn it really square, but you get the idea. So again, that breaks up the print, and this is where normally in sewing, you see, we all love to pattern match. So you definitely, for example, want this is actually not pattern match, look at this, but it's hidden. But you know, on here, the horizontal pattern match is a must. Otherwise you would end up with a front skirt which is different to the back skirt. My vertical pattern match is actually not very good. So most of the time we try to pattern match as it's moving around the body or as it's meeting, because we try to hide the seam. But this print, you can actually use that break to break up the print and break up the tension as well. It's a bit like if you were printing, if you had a row, why am I wonky? If you had a row of sunflowers going here or dots, it looked really regimented. If you make the sunflowers alternate over dots, then suddenly it becomes more dynamic. So you can use stuff like that. And I'm going to show you another example, which is Balenciaga, because although I said Balenciaga doesn't do a lot of prints, when he does prints, he does them absolutely beautifully. So let's have a look. So you can see, I'm going to hold it up slightly. You can see this is sort of quite a big print. It's sort of abstract, very beautiful late 50s floral, which I always love. And can you see they've added again the center front seam, and it's purposely not matched. Interesting, I think actually is matched maybe on the skirt, but on the top, basically by breaking it up slightly, it actually shifts it and it makes it, it breaks down the print, so it becomes more suitable for your body. And again, we've got two more darts there, so again that will break it up. Then you also got the waistband, which again breaks up the print, and then you got these big pleats, and then you see the back again, and that's again, you can see they've added a bow and layers of print as well, so it breaks it up. So it's adding about details. I think if you look at a lot of 1960s fashion, and we looked at that a while ago, I did a review of a that 1960s dress. You can, if you have a print which is really beautiful and you don't want to hide it at all, like a dress like that really shows it off, doesn't it? So if you have an amazing floral print or something, and if you wanted to really show it off and it isn't too blocky, I think that always makes a difference. If you just have little darts there, it looks perfect. And Heather saying the bodice fabric has a diagonal feel for me. Very interesting. So it's the Balenciaga. Yes, it sort of just breaks it up, and yeah, it becomes, rather than across, it becomes more, yeah, dynamic, diagonal. It just suddenly becomes moving rather than flat. So if we, I wanted to look at this dress quickly, because I think the reason this works without breaks as well is because the print isn't regimented. Can you see? It's sort of, it's flowing. So with a big print like that, you don't really need a design feature because it's really well chosen. But if you had like a really blocky print, like say dots or something, it actually becomes much nicer if you, for example, add, this is an exaggeration, but if you sort of break up the print, it sort of makes it less flat. It moves with the body. And Susanna is saying when the color in the fabric is different variations of the same, even large patterns blend better. And that's really true. So for example, if you had like a Balenciaga, it's black and green. And I think the black has a little bit of green in it. Then it suddenly looks less jolting. And I'll show you one which is the opposite, which I love, but I find quite tricky. So this one, can you see? That is a big pleat and very contrasty. And I actually, when I first saw this fabric, I wanted to make this style visit, and you'll find out more in my tutorial. I won't give it all away. But this is actually, this only works well because first of all, this is again a chiffon, and can you see it's 2 layers. So the dots are not aligned on the top layer and the under layer, so they look less regimented. So because again they have little pleats on the skirt, and then if it was just solid, so it's actually slightly off that print. If it was just like that, it's very solid, but it's made slightly better by it being 2 layers of fabric with the print slightly off, so it looks slightly more layered, 3D, and also less regimented, I think. I quite like that. So these are the things you need to consider. So I'm going to do, actually, have I got one more big print? Then I'm going to move on to border prints because I thought it would be really interesting. Oh, this one is quite a good, interesting idea as well. This is a big print, but what they've done is they combine it with a block, and then again they've actually added seams. So you can see that top has a horizontal seam across and that slit in the bow. So again, they're breaking it up, and here you got the darts on these trousers, and then you got a pleat. So that breaks up a fitted trouser. If you of course got a gathered trouser, I think that always works quite well because then the volume works really well. I'm gonna now share hopefully my screen. Let's see how do I do it? Okay, because I want to show you a few of the videos. I've just done like a little folder on my pattern cutting school, so lots of you already know it. If you don't, this is how it actually looks like once you sign up. And I've got my favorite tab because I've added all the tutorials which are good for prints like that. So let's start. Oh, I wanted to start with a pair of trousers, which I didn't actually add, so let's find them here. So the trousers I really thought would be perfect for this is these ones, which we drafted a few weeks ago. And can you see they have like a really nice pleat? If I start at the beginning, because I've got a 12, can you see? Actually, I've got them in the studio. But this, if you had a bigger print, they would work beautifully in a tiny ditzy. They would work beautiful in a paisley as well. But they also would work big in a big print, because again, this breaks up the big print on your hip area. We don't want like big circles or big shapes. And then at the bottom, I would either gather my back for big print, so again it breaks up the big print on your bum area, or I would have darts. So again, both of that would break up the back area. And the other videos I chose for these sort of prints are, again, you can see this top. Again, it has these cuts across here. So if you had a bigger print, that would break it up. And of course, you could also add a center front line like on the Balenciaga. So again, it breaks it up. So it's a good one to try out. If you have like a silk print, I think buy a spiral cut style like this, because then it would all break it up and look really beautiful. So it sort of would be the opposite. And it's any sort of actually, I'm going to make a collection for you on the membership. I can just put them all in one collection. But stuff like that works really well for prints, because when you have a solid print here and you can choose really carefully where you have your pleat, you can really carefully choose your print there. And then, of course, it gets pleated here and here, and doesn't stand out that much. Or stuff like that as well. That would look quite nice with a tonal print like the Balenciaga, if the colors were together, because again, that bow or crossover detail breaks it up. And again, this Schiaparelli style, again, that sort of breaks it up. You know, it's anywhere where you go from flat to something 3D. And Natalie's saying, I love that large print coat Helen Mirren wore in the coronation video. Yes, I actually got it. So let's have a look at that. And I agree with you. So in a second, I'm going to have a look at border prints. But look, this is the Helen Mirren Natalie was talking about. And that is a perfect example of where big print works really well without any distractions. But the reason as well as work, because can you see it's very dynamic. It's not regimented. I think when big prints can work in anything, very easy prints to work with. Once they become even more spread out or more regimented, then they're harder to work with. The reason this, again, is like Suzanne was saying, that the color variation here is quite similar. So if it was like a white background with red roses, I don't think it would work that well. But because it's tonal, it works really well. And that's also if you buy a natural fabric with a print and it's a bit too contrasty for you, or, you know, it doesn't quite work. I actually quite often dye stuff because I buy stuff from Charity Shop Fabrics, and then I just make it work for me. And this looks like it's an over dyed fabric because there's no white in it, so everything has a beautiful rosy tint. So you could, if you found a floral print in a shop, if it was cotton or silk, you could actually just dye it in the washing machine, and when you get that beautiful, it looks like it's garment dyed. It's very tonal look, so it works really well. So that's easy prints to work with because they're so beautiful. But if you have a print and you sort of lay it on and it doesn't quite suit you, that's when you might want to look more at what I was talking about, and where you add volume, pleats, this specific design lines to bring it closer together. Because that's what I did with this fabric, because it's so sparse, that fabric. So it looks nice on a skirt, but on the bodice, it looks like I was just wearing a white dress. So I actually started adding design lines as well, so it looks closer together. So these are all the things you can like have fun with, and like it opens up more ways of using prints by doing stuff. So this was my thoughts on big prints, and I loved reading your chat as well. And I'd love to see if you make some of it. I like that breakup for bigger prints. So let's have a look. The other thing, so Jenny from the membership, she bought this really nice paisley, and it has this border, and I love it. It's got neon in it. But she said she always makes basically, I think, shirt dresses. And she said, like, what else can I make with it? And I thought it'd be a really nice way to look at how you can actually use, which is basically two prints. You're getting your stripes, and then you're getting your all over patterns, how you can use it. And quite often in sort of vintage fashion, of course, it's used like this, where you have a border. Oh, I've got one here. I've got a really nice Horroxes here. And on the Horroxes, they actually used a solid, and then they reflected it back. So you can use your one print, for example, on the bodice, and your other other print on a gathered skirt and play around with it. So you can either use it quite specifically, like a Horroxes, where you actually draft different parts of different fabrics, or you can add them more as a detail. And I'm glad you like it as well, Natalia. So that's a really nice print. And the way, but even like a dress like that, for example, if you have a print at the bottom, then it gets really nice. Or what I have done before, what works really well with styles like that is, for example, either that you do a full outfit. So for example, if you have a so quite a 1960s, like a tunic and a pair of, for example, wide leg trousers. This is a really bad drawing. You can really use that repeated pattern quite specifically throughout your whole outfit. And then of course you can wear it separate or you can wear it together, but that way you can really sort of pull an outfit together by having the print repeated. And the other thing, of course, if you, for example, you if you tried out my 6-panel skirt, you can have lots of fun with it, and it's of course really easy to make. I know a few of you have made it. So if you had the 6-panel skirt and used a fabric like that, you would either have your print like this, so it becomes quite geometric and it breaks it up, so it does something else with it. If by contrast you actually, rather than having 6 separate pieces, what you can actually do is that you add quite a lot of flair to begin with, and then you, instead of having separate pieces, you lay them on a piece of fabric, so they look like this. And if you do that, you actually end up with a skirt, which is more like a, I never know what to call them. It's a slightly more sculptural skirt, which works really well. But then, of course, the border goes all the way around, and it's like a sort of, it's a tulip skirt, but it goes out and then it goes straight. So you can have fun with borders like that really effectively. The other thing is to actually, at the moment, I'm using it as a border, but of course you can also use it as, I know I've just given you my pin code, but this is thankfully only the pin code for this iPad, not my whole life secrets I've just given away from you. Yeah, I'm glad you agree on this. This is, I think I did a analysis of a similar style ages ago on Instagram, and when I saw Jenny's fabric, I just thought that's a really nice way, because I love this way of breaking it up. And then of course if you used a panel skirt with lots of panels, you really get that really nice geometric design. But this is quite, and especially this is interesting because it's quite a drapey fabric, so it wouldn't look like, it wouldn't be geometric, but it adds really nice drapey lines on a soft fabric like that. It looks really complicated, but it is not. I want to show you this dress. This is something I think Kate and I looked up for drafting diaries, and this is not the right, it's different fabric, but up to now I've used the contrasting stripe paisley, this one. I've basically done up to now is all designing. I've done the body out of this and then the borders out of this. But of course you can also do it the other way around. So you could actually have the all over print, for example, if you had a sort of a simple dress, you could have the smaller print at the center and then the bigger print down below. I think that would work quite well if you have more seams. So again, it's broken up, because if you just have a solid stripe, like the solid border stripe in the center, then I would actually use it as a separate waistband, and then you can have whatever styles you want at the top and at the bottom. So that'd be quite a nice contrast. If you're doing it just as a 2-part dress, so dress with a separate bodice and a skirt, then I would actually add again some sort of pleating so it breaks it up and it's not too broad, because that could become like 2 stripes next to each other. And Heather is saying Are they long darts then for the tulip skirt? Could we still access the Instagram video? Yes, I will try to hunt it out. Instagram has changed the layout, so I'm having real trouble finding anything I've done more than a few months ago. It might be in a guide series, but it basically is when you draft your 6-panel skirts like that, you normally draft it quite as narrow as you want to. But if you drafted it a bit bigger, with more volume, all you can do is, like, for example, I think this works quite well if it's like a midi skirt, and then sort of halfway, you literally just chop it off, and then this becomes a fold line. So you can either fold your fabric, or you can cut out a really big fat pattern piece like that. You probably get away with folding. So they are like darts. You got the right Heather. So you're turning seams into darts. And I will try to link to the Instagram video in the description below. And I've got to finish off in a second, and I just wanted to have a quick look. Can you hear me now? Yes, you can. Sorry, I have to silence myself because the iPhone doesn't like any other sounds. So I can hope you can hear me now. And I quickly do the last. I think it wasn't very long. You can hear me. Sorry. Technology is always a little bit of an issue. But all I was saying is basically, rather than using the really nice border print as a border, which I love, you can actually use it as a collar. Or, if you did, for example, really simple top and you did the roll collar on the straight as a border print, that would look quite beautiful as well. And I can quickly, yes, because I was just showing, it's basically like I'm going to make a little folder of the different print tutorials for you to look at. But it's just sort of, as Heather was saying, you can, there's a big print laid on you, but the same as a border print, you can actually say which way round this actually suit me the most. You can have a lot more fun rather than always just thinking of it as a border, although that is actually really beautiful and it is designed for that purpose, for a reason, because it works really well for adding extra detail. And of course, depending on the weave of the fabric, sometimes if you turn it 90 degrees, so the border is horizontal, that again would make a really interesting sort of striped skirt, which would be really beautiful. I will quickly open the page again. I was basically just sharing what I thought was quite Yeah, you can see that. Okay, so the last few photos I showed was these ones. So I was just talking about how you can, again, use your border print or your placement print quite specifically. So for example, it wouldn't work as well here, but if you, for example, used it here and here, it looked quite geometric. And then of course you could have it repeated on the skirt and then have the main print for the rest of it. So you can have fun with that. But even like, for example, this is quite a different one. This would be great for, this is a Balenciaga one. This would be great for big print because it would break it up in lots of places. At the same time, it would also be really nice if you had the border and you used it, for example, just for that strip. Actually might look a little bit like braces, but it's a way you can actually start playing around with it and think about where else you want to place it. Oh, did I show you this one? So this one, which is a really nice vignette, if you use the border print, again, you will have this really nice geometric border print for that one. Actually, I'm going to show you one last one, and I will have to play into it. I did this about 3 years ago, and I was just looking at it. I absolutely love it. Let's see where I can find it. Apparently not. Okay, that's the wrong one. I apologize. There was a 1920s. 1920s full gathered. Oh, if you're wondering, I'm still doing all the thumbnails because I'm by myself, so I'm slowly doing it. But can you see this skirt? This is a really nice way to use for both big prints and border prints, because if it used the border print for that, then you could break it up. If I show you. Oh, hello, Jen. Thank you for joining us. I'm just finishing up, but you can join us for the last bit. And Natalie's saying, I have a large border print. I don't want to cut into it. So I like the long data. Yeah, that's why I loved it, because it is, that's why I think quite often you want to use either for like a tunic or a skirt like that, because as soon as you cut it out, you actually do want to pattern match it, even if it's geometric. So leave it intact is so much nicer. But this skirt, I need to quickly look how it's actually looking like. This skirt is really nice because it's basically a bit like this. You can do it like this or a bit different, but it looks like this. And of course you can either, for example, you could have your contrast, your border in here, for example, and then you could add the seam here as well and break it up and have your border down there. Or again, if you're using a really big print, this again breaks up your print with lots of different techniques. So again, if you add the seam, it will sort of break up your big print, and then you could have quite specifically chosen areas which suit you in your waist area where you don't want a big blob. And then the gathers again break that up as well. So you have 3 methods, 3 ways of breaking up the print. I'm going to actually finish, because one of the companies I worked for, that was actually before my time, but we always used it as a word of warning. And they once did a beautiful collection, and they used really big circular prints, and it's like dresses and mini skirts. It worked great. But they also did a pair of straight trousers, and the factory placed the print so it was on each bottom cheek exactly. And it's just, it's just where you really have to consider your front, your back, where it is on the body. Same thing, you don't want to have big circular prints here, or most of us don't anyway. So sort of really think about, like, prints are great because they allow you to have lots of fun and bring extra interest in it. But it also means you have to consider a third thing. So not just the fabric weight and how it will behave in your drafting idea, but also how that print will actually work for yourself. And if it's not the ideal print for you, then how you can break it up or split it up and make it work for you. So this was my guide to play and basically all over print. I was gonna split it in big and small, but we got into medium and big straight away. So on big prints, and especially sort of more placed regimented prints, which I find the trickiest to work with, and also border prints, which are actually a joy to work with, but they bring you lots of different design possibilities. So it's more about choosing what works for you. So thank you so much for everybody for watching live. And you can join me if you aren't, if you hadn't had enough. I'll be back tonight with the lovely Trisha on my channel at 8 o'clock. And Natalie will probably be asleep. So good night, Natalie. But we'll be talking order of construction. So both Trisha and I probably never used instruction booklets. So I've been taught a specific way, and when you work it out, and I know Natalie as well just learned it at university and then did it herself. So we're just going to choose our sort of talk about our golden rules, what can go wrong, all this sort of fun. And I always love these sessions with Trisha because she's so inspiring, knowledgeable, and lovely as well. So I hope to see some of you there if it's not the middle of the night. And thank you so much for watching. Bye bye, Claire. Bye bye, Jen. Bye bye, Heather. Bye bye, Natalie. Bye bye, Janet and Suzanne as well. Thank you so much for joining me, everybody. It's lovely to chat to all of you, and I hope it was helpful. And of course, do leave me a thumbs up. And bye, Beth, and have a look at Beth's lovely skirts on Instagram because they are fantastic. Bye.